well, that's me.
Plus, tá informar, educar, para se usar, como prevenir. A noite nós back com o nosso programa de Tour Jobs. A sim, me acorda, que tá, para mim, não sei nem com o Tour Jobs, mas passar a visa jamais para o programa do Tour Jobs Award de 8 para 10 horas. No jamais, Jobs. Então, a noite nós temos programa interessante para você e programa caminha nosso programa está full in English. Our program will be full in English tonight because our guest is an English speaker, but you're gonna get a program with a lot of information, very, very good information. So listen very carefully what we're gonna talk with you tonight because he is, I want to say, an expert, a professional on the HIV/AIDS, all about it. So he is someone that what he's going to tell you tonight is very, very important for you to know. I know we have been talking a lot about HIV, and I know there's people who speak English that sometimes because the program is in Papiamento, they don't understand everything. But tonight, we're going to give you the cherry on the cake. We have someone that speaks English. His name is Robert Singh. He is a social worker and he has a lot of experience on HIV/AIDS when it comes to those who are infected and those who are affected. Because sometimes we talk a lot about the affected, but we talk about those who are infected, but we don't talk about those who are affected by it too. So tonight, our guest, Robert, welcome.
Thank you very much, Dudley, for the kind introduction. But if you say I'm an expert in HIV, I will say, well, I have knowledge and experience. So let's see what the audience think about me.
Okay. So in a while, we're going to continue talking with Robert. As he said himself, he has a lot of experience, and that is very important because our listener need to get very valid information that they can use, and most of the times we want our guests through this information that they become more educated so that they know how to prevent and how to have a more balanced life with prevention in it. So that's why we're doing this program. Pensei a noite para isso não habla papiamento, o programa está full em inglês, pero nós somos uma comunidade bilingual, pois a noite escuta bom, entende bom, o que nós temos que fazer, pessoal, tudo o que nós temos papi a noite, é de vital importância de maneira tudo se man ora nosso programa Cura Plus está informar, educar para assim não possa como prevenir. A noite também nós temos uma secção maneira nós começar semana passada. Imaginavo, depois de nos break e nos música, lo vinco é parte A, a doutrina, nós vai conversar mais em detalhes com nosso invitado de hoje, que é Robert Singh, over the HIV/AIDS e tudo o que está rondando essa aqui e tudo o que está importante para abusar. Nós vai para um break e diz nós vai ter um programa, Cura Plus está informar, educar, para se não usar, como prevenir. Nós estamos no programa Cura Plus para informar, assim não você educar e prevenir. A noite com nosso invitado Robert Singh e nós vamos papia riba e parte de HIV/AIDS e também nós conhecer e mesmo um tiki essa sua experiência de trabalho aqui. Robert, first of all, our listener and people who are watching us through Facebook would like to know, who is Robert Singh?
Okay, well, not very much I can say. Robert Singh is 51 years old, and after finishing university with a bachelor's degree in social work, I went right away to work in the public health department in a regional hospital. I spent 8 years in the field working with people who are infected with HIV and AIDS, persons who are also infected with STIs and tuberculosis.
Okay.
I also have some very deep insight and experiences with people who are suicidal and working with relatives and friends in the same capacity.
Okay. For those who are listening to us, Robert is originally from Georgetown, Guyana.
Yes.
So there is where he started working, and now he's living in Curacao. And we are very fortunate to have him in the program to share with us tonight his view. If you have to look at the difference between have working in Guyana for so many years in the field of HIV and prevention, both with those who are infected and those who are affected, what is the difference in the years that you have been here? What's the difference between Guyana and Curacao?
Well, an honest opinion is always good. When I look around and gaining my experiences by observation here, Guyana is having some very good and strong programs regarding HIV and AIDS and even STIs. These programs are very robust because we are a bigger country, and the prevention effort is very, very good. People actually are informed. The government of Guyana take a very big lead in terms of prevention and treatment. So Curacao has not come to that point. People here, we are still at the point where we don't want to talk about HIV. We still have our head in the sand, and it is not a proper direction to go.
Robert, as someone who has a lot of experience, do you believe, I think Guyana has made of HIV a priority in the health? Do you think that is one of the difference that Curacao has to do to make HIV a priority so that more attention can be put at it?
You are absolutely right, Dorothy. Health in Guyana is a priority, but in the early 90s and 2000, we find that HIV is and was affecting a large number of the Guyanese population. And the government of Guyana, and at that time and now, put their heads together and say, look, we have to do something about this infection because we are going to lose lots of our younger population to this infection.
Exactly.
And indeed, it has become a priority, and up to now, Guyana remain a leading country with the fight of HIV and AIDS because of the priority and because of what the government do to make it a priority.
I'm totally agree with you on that because I myself, being so long in this field, and I have noticed that from since 85 until now, Curacao figures have been going higher and higher and higher. And if you look in the Caribbean, you see that the whole attitude of the people are changing in a way to what is HIV. And still here in Curacao, as you have said yourself, it's still, people don't talk about it. People don't talk about it. It's like a big taboo. I think even sometimes people make excuses that it is not talking about sex while everybody is doing sex. And still, this is one of the issues that every day people are discussing when it's going to become a priority, when the attention is going to be given to it, for it to really help us to come to a point, as you have said in Guyana, the young generation, the generation that's coming. That is one of the things that we need to start taking care of it, or at the end of the day, Cura will have no future, no young people to take the lead of things.
True. And I want to add very clearly that when I visited here in 2013 and I met you, I was so impressed, and after the years goes by, I was even taken back, because when I look around, I'm only seeing you in the face of HIV, working with HIV. And I ask myself, who are the other stakeholders? Not even no one from the government is working in the field of HIV. And I want to publicly admonish you for all your effort in this undertaking, fighting this virus in this way with hardly any support. So I am very much taken back, because I'm still looking around up to 2017. I'm still not seeing anyone coming forward.
Thank you very much, Robert, for that. And I have to say, it's not only me, I have a team with me. It's people also who voluntarily is doing this job. We are doing it voluntarily, and we will continue doing it, because as you have said, we are looking that there is a generation that is coming that needs to have a better way of living with more responsibility and commitment to their sexual life and to their health. And I think for that reason, we are doing it. And yes, we will continue, and we hope that as we go along, it become a priority on the list of health, and that really the government put their hands, and so we can make a difference and change it, and finally see the figures going down, because for a country of 150,000 people, it is too much, the figures that we're having right now. True. Robert, give us the definition of HIV for those who, until now, do not know what is the difference between HIV and AIDS.
Okay, so before we get to the definition, let me just point out that we have HIV-1 and HIV-2. A lot of times the focus is on HIV-1 and not on HIV-2. But for HIV-2, I just want to point out a few things, not so many, because the priority is on HIV-1. What I know about HIV-2 is that HIV-2 is found mostly in Africa. HIV-2 does not have the priority and attention as HIV-1. HIV-2 is harder to spread than HIV-1, and there are not so many research and testing done on HIV-2. Now for the definition, HIV, some people may want to know what is HIV. HIV is a virus, and we have to keep that in mind. It's a virus. It is not a cup, it's not a pen, it's not a book, or it's not a thing. It's a virus. It's not a bacteria, it is not a fungus, it's a virus. And the meaning of HIV, which is H, I, and V, it's a human immunodeficiency virus. And the meaning to that, the virus is found in human, and the human immune system is unable to fight the virus. So that is HIV. Now, if we should look at AIDS, AIDS is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. And we have a difference there, because we have syndrome. But when we are at the stage of AIDS, it also means that the immune system is unable or is deficient to fight off the virus, because the HIV virus causes AIDS because you progress to AIDS from HIV. Now, a few things about what is syndrome. For some people asking, what is syndrome? Well, syndrome is a collection of signs and symptoms that made up syndromes. and you get those syndromes when you progress to AIDS. But let's look at what we know about signs and symptoms. Well, symptoms are what you feel, and signs are what someone can see. For example, when someone progresses to AIDS, they can show some signs. For example, people in the stage of AIDS would have lost at least 10% of their BMI, which is their body mass index, or 10% of your weight. And that's a physical sign that someone can see. So that is an example of sign. But when it comes to symptoms, symptoms is only something that you can experience. For example, if I tell the doctor that I'm feeling nauseated, or you feel like you want to vomit, that is only you can feel it, because that is what we call symptoms. So a collection of signs and symptoms, it made up the syndrome. And we only get that when you progress to AIDS.
Robert, before you continue, you hear or people talk about HIV is a virus that comes from animal. How true is this?
Well, some of the research some of the scientific research that has been put out there, and some of the theory, they're saying that the earliest existence of HIV is from gorillas and monkeys and so on, and from that human contract the HIV, and from then on it is being passed on because of these different ways. But to be honest, sometimes those theories are so scientific, it is so difficult to understand. And I will tell people that it is here now, the virus, it is affecting us. Let's concentrate on that. And let's not spend too much time in those theories to understand where it comes from. Some people even have biblical theories to say that this is a disease that God sent down on sinners. So I usually ask myself, when a baby is born with the virus contracting from the mother, does God send down that on a baby, and a baby who is harmless, who haven't committed any sin? So the theories can vary from different to different reasons.
The reason why I ask you this, because most of the time when you are giving information outside, people jump right away and ask you, is this a human virus? It actually come from the human? And sometimes they themselves answer the question by saying gorilla, monkeys and things like that. And at the same time they ask you, what does HIV do? Because they hear about it, but they don't know how to put a connection with it. That's why I ask you, and I'm very glad the way you explain it, so that finally people can have more clear understanding of this, that as Robert said, let us not invest time in knowing from where it's coming, let us invest time in the reality that it is right now. Yes.
Well, it's a valid question, to be honest, because I myself sometimes reflect on those theories, but I will not invest a lot of time on them, but it is a valid point.
Okay. Yes, sir, what more you have to share with us on the definition aspect of this?
Well, we have lots of things to cover tonight. I hope that time will permit us to go through them.
Yes.
And I hope our viewers will ask their questions and we can bring answers to them also. So let's continue with AIDS. And we said that from HIV one progressed to AIDS, and there are some of the characteristics that mark you or medically define you that you are at the stage of AIDS, and such we have is our CD4 level. CD means cluster of differentiation. It is not the CD that we buy in shops and stores that have music. It's a CD4, and CD means cluster of differentiation, telling us that the CD4 is being attacked by the HIV virus. And when that CD4 number reduced to 200, at that point in time, clinically, you're being categorized that you are at the 8th stage. Now, a normal CD4 count in a healthy person can range from 600 to 1600. But for HIV, for AIDS, when you meet at the point of 200 and below, it means that you can be put into this bracket of AIDS.
Robert, this part, because this is one of the parts that even today, you still have to explain people it very clearly for them to understand. The 200 aspect. Even sometimes to people who are HIV positive itself. Can you really let the people understand why it's so important that don't reach to 200?
Okay, now first of all we have to look at the function of the CD4 cells, and this is the cell that is in the immune system, and the main function of this cell is to defend the immune system, defend it from any foreign body that will enter into our body. And any foreign body enters, the CD4 are the defender who will go and fight off this foreign body. So when the HIV virus enter into the body, the immune system, and the immune system is made up of a number of defense cells that is there to fight off any foreign body, and the virus is a foreign body. So when the CD4 started to fight, in some time in the fighting, and as time goes on, it becomes very low. So as lower our CD4 becomes, the viral load in someone who is HIV positive becomes very high, and the CD4 goes down. It is critically important that we always keep our CD4 at a very healthy range so that we can able to keep fighting off other infection that enters into the body. Okay. So that is why it is always important we keep our CD4 as high as possible.
And it is very important too that someone who is HIV positive try to keep it above 200 and not go down to 200.
That's right, because when you're in that stage of 200, you're in the AIDS stage. However, you can come out from HIV and progress to, you can come out from AIDS and progress to HIV.
Exactly.
Because if your CD4 goes up to a healthy range, it means that you are not in the category of AIDS anymore.
And at the same thing, it comes like, today we're talking about undetectable. How much more attention you put on your health, who better the medication work, and that you will reach to that point of undetectable. Because I have people who, they start drinking medication and right away they're asking you, when I will become undetectable?
Well, the aspect of undetectable is important for someone to be able to understand how their body is progressing in order to dealing with the infection. But undetectable is not the ultimate or the final goal for someone who is positive, because you can be undetectable and you still have some amount of viruses in your body, but because it is so low that the test, the machine and so on is unable to detect it. Some people take that award and say, okay, they are undetectable, and they become very careless. They started to become not so adherent to taking their medication on time. They started to expose themselves to unprotected sex. They started to use more alcohol, and they started to do things that will wear down the immune system. So the ultimate goal is not to just be undetectable and that's you have an award there. The ultimate goal is to forever keeping yourself undetectable.
Robert, I'm glad you explained it that way, because most of the time you find people who are positive striving to be undetectable, but when they reach that point, they take a careless attitude. And
Yes.
some of the time, even they go and do things that they get reinfected.
Right.
So, can you explain that aspect also? How damaging it is to reinfect yourself?
Well, the concept of reinfection is where it's something I find very dangerous and alarming. One example is that a person who is HIV positive, who is having unprotected sex with someone also who is also positive, people have the concept in their mind that they say, look, we don't need to use condoms because both of us are HIV positive. It makes no difference. But it makes quite a lot of difference, because when those two people come together, we don't know at what level or this higher strain of virus one is having than the other. And also the amount of viral load that someone is having can pass over to someone who is having a lower or a higher viral load. But not only the viral load is very risky, also it is the strain of the virus. Someone who is HIV positive may have a virus that is coming to become very resistant to treatment. And if that enters someone who is very compliant with their treatment and having no resistance, imagine when that virus or viruses get into that person, it means that person also build up resistance, and it can affect the way how the drug interaction works with the immune system. And when you have resistance, it means that you have to change your line of medication. You have to go from 1 to 2 and sometimes even 3, because the virus becomes stronger and you started to have resistance.
Okay, so for those who are listening to us, what Robert is saying, most of the time people think that playing a Russian roulette with this, going with someone that is HIV positive, there is no consequences. There is a very serious consequences in doing this, because you never know what the other person has in their body, and they can pass it to your body, and probably at that point in time your medication do not work in a way that can help you fight this kind of infection, and you get worse. Is this one of the reasons why some people get immune to a medication, that the medication doesn't work anymore with them?
Yes, that is the main reason where you have failure. The person can be adhering, taking the medication quite on time, pay attention to everything, but the drug is failing. It is because the virus in the body becomes very resistant, and it is not going to work anymore when it comes to that point. The resistance is because someone who is on medication, first-line medication, they were doing good all the while, and suddenly they become not so adherent anymore, and they started to take the medication out of time. And during that period of time, you find that because you're not taking it in time, or maybe you're using alcohol or exposed to other strain of virus, it start to resist the present medication. So that is the reason where you have this resistance. And it's a very, very serious reason, because right now across the Caribbean, they are also looking at ways to keep people to become very adherent with their medications.
Ok. Nós trabalhamos para break e diz nós back do nosso programa Cura Plus está informar. A noite conversando interessantemente com Robert Singh over the HIV e diferentes aspectos importantes para assim a também com cuidar mais e com prevenir que você pode ganhar de situações dificultosas para sobrar bom não ter uma disciplina que você remedir. Kies ons de back de Cura Plus está informar, educar para assim você com prevenir. E nós estamos aqui no programa Cura Plus para informar, educar, para assim você com prevenir. E a noite através de uma secção de Imagine, imaginável, então nos frase está o seguinte: While you are proclaiming peace with your lips, be careful to have it even more fully in your heart. Ora você está proclamando paz, o lip para o rato quieto. Igual como tiene mais tanto de meu próprio coração. Imagine, imaginar. Primeiro nós finalizamos o programa, nós voltamos a essa frase aqui diante e assina ou por meditar e bater durante o dia aqui. Robert, HIV positive people are just as any others, and you have those who are disciplined. You have those who are not so disciplined. Alcohol and smoking and drugs is something that people use sometimes for them to, let's say, to know how to deal or how to manage being positive. What is the damage that this can do, especially as part of your nutrition, as part of what you eat and what you drink?
Well, that's a very, very critical question. Some people using drugs and alcohol before they become positive. So in that way, they continue using drugs and alcohol. While some people started to use drugs and alcohol when they become positive as a coping mechanism. We have to understand that when someone becomes HIV positive, when they test it, and we will talk more about the testing, but when they test it and they become HIV positive, some people go into a shock. Some people start to have anxiety. Some people also can develop mild and severe depression. Especially for men, so they find coping mechanism in terms of drinking and smoking and using drugs. However, those habits are very, very detrimental to someone who is HIV positive and at the same time on ARVs or HIV medication. Every time you take a dose of medication, it has to go to the liver before it is being distributed into the body. And the liver is only one filter house we have in our system. And that liver performs more than 500 different functions, including neutralizing or break down the ARV medication to make it suitable so that it can work into the immune system. So all the other functions that the liver has to carry on, the liver can be overburdened. Now you add alcohol or drug, the liver also have to take on the responsibility to filter those elements out of the immune system. So there are times when the liver cannot perform all those functions at the same time because the liver is quite overburdened. And imagine that the ARVs or the HIV medication is passing through the liver and the alcohol and drugs meeting at the same point, and that kind of interaction that's going on there can cause the liver a lot of damages. So it is quite important that persons who are HIV positive and who are on treatment and care, that is mean not the medication, and persons who are on the medication should totally abstain from alcohol. Some persons have the view that of course you can take some alcohol in small doses, but that's not true. I am of the view that you should not take any alcohol because when it interacts with the drug, it does not give you the maximum benefit from the drug. It also adds burdens and kills the fighter cells in the liver, and it also will have impact on help to contribute to resistance. So it's quite important that you should say no to alcohol and smoking and any drugs. But for smoking, it is also important that you must not smoke while you are on medication or if you're not on medication yet. In fact, no one should smoke. Even people who are not HIV positive should not smoke because smoking also damages the liver. You can end up with where the liver can lose its optimal function, and when your liver is not functioning in the best way, your body are also open to different kind of infection because the liver is not there to help to neutralize and filter out the bad elements. So smoking also contains, one cigarette contains over 100 different kinds of chemical. So people just believe that cigarette is just tobacco and nicotine. No, it it contains such a high amount of chemicals that when it enters the body, it burdens the lung, and it also have impact on the liver.
Robert, the medication itself, because you explained very clearly the function of the using of the alcohol, especially the liver, is one of the most important organ of the human body.
Yes.
But the medication itself, the HIV medication, we know there are difference of them. Do they also have an effect on the liver?
Of course, all medication have an effect on the liver. Even if we take multivitamins, it have an effect on the liver. And if you look at the medication, the smallest amount of dose, it's 500 milligrams per dose. Some people are on one time per day, some people are on 2 times per day. And you have, I want to believe you have a dose of 1300 milligrams per day or once a day. And that is creating a burden on the liver, even though it is going there to help to fight the HIV virus. But the point is that the dosages are so high that it have an impact or an effect on the liver. That is why persons who are on the ARVs, every 3 to 6 months they have to do an LFT test, which means the liver function, to understand what is happening with the liver, if the liver is losing its function, and what could happen, what other medication could be taken in order to help the liver to get back to its normal function. So even the HIV medication have implication on the liver.
In a case like this, what will be an advice of you for someone who is HIV like for instance drinking a lot of water, what advice you give someone while you're drinking your medication to do next to it to still stimulate that the liver will work in a way that you will not come to the point that after some years, because I mean as older you become, more difficult it becomes for your liver to do the work with the medication.
That's true. So this is where the physician or the doctor and maybe nurses who work in the field of HIV, if they see a patient is going down with liver failure, they have to really provide some counseling for that person in order to help the person to provide more care for their whole immune system, including the liver. So the more you stay away from drugs and alcohol, and if you eat proper, because your nutrition also plays a very important part of the immune system. So right away, if someone is going down that track or that line, that liver care is very important. And you can do simple things. Avoid too much of sugar. Right across the Caribbean, we take too much sugar in our diet, in our drinks, in our fruits, or we eat too much food that is sugar-based. You can pay attention to more natural sugar like fruits, and you can also eat more green leafy vegetables. And the way how we prepare our food also is that we actually cook down and kills everything. So your nutrition also can come to the point where you can help to provide more care for the liver and the kind of food that you can eat that will help to support the liver.
I believe each country has their own. Some countries produce more veggie and fruits than others. Curacao, most of our fruits come from outside. Some of the fruits that you can get here is like some people might have a sapodilla tree in the yard, a mango tree, a banana tree, or some guava tree. What is the type of fruits that we, living in Curacao, an island that doesn't do so much agriculture, what is the type of fruits that we can use to be able to cut down that sugar?
Well, first of all, sugar is good for our body, because if we don't have sugar, it means that we can end up with some kind of malfunction. And as usual, too much is not good. And you have different sources of sugar. For example, if you have sugar coming from fruits, it's a different sugar that breaks down from carbohydrates, because the carbohydrates that we eat also produces sugar. So when we're talking about fruits, we are supposed to eat, according to the health specialists, people who study on nutrition and so on, they're asking for 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. But as we know that we would be unable to meet that demand, because
exactly.
Most people don't see the benefits in eating fruits. But if you can't afford so much serving, at least eat 2 fruits per day. And you can eat fruits that are available. For example, banana is having a high source of potassium, and potassium is very good for building the blood, because it helps the better our blood, we can able to resist any infection. Pineapple also is good. Cashew is good. If you can afford avocado, it's good. Any fruit is good. Any fruit is good and healthy to eat. But you can stick with 1 or 2 per serving.
Okay. So as we are talking with Robert and we're getting some tip and advice too, so try to not stress yourself and use what you can get and what our own island provide for us in fruits and vegetables, so you can be able to manage. Because as Robert said, I don't believe we are so accustomed to go and eat fruits and vegetables five times a day, but at least if you're gonna do it with what you can find, and that is okay.
Yes.
Don't go and stress yourself, go out of the box and say, no, I have to find this, or otherwise I'm not eating according to what the nutrition is saying. Just what you get, try to use it in a good way and try to get as much the vitamins and protein that you're getting out of the fruits and the vegetables. One of the things that we would like to touch right now with Robert is the mode of transmission. Can you explain to our people this?
Well, yes, the mode of transmission with HIV is very, very important.
Mhm.
It's critical so that people can understand how this virus is being transmitted from person to person. But when we talk about the mode of transmission, we want to keep these four these four body fluids in mind. So we want you to keep in mind the blood, the semen, the vaginal secretion, and breast milk. So these four body fluids are important in this part of the discussion. So they are the blood, the semen, the vaginal secretion, and the breast milk. Just to quickly tell you what are they, well, we know what is the blood. When you cut someone, they bleed, and we have different types of blood cells. We have the red and white blood cells, but all of that make up the blood. We have the semen, and the semen and the sperms are different. For example, when I will normally do HIV presentation here, some people, and a lot of people, have the concept that the semen and the sperms are the same body fluid. When you ask, I could remember I asked the question, not here but in Guyana, I asked a group of people, what do you understand by semen? Well, one man said, men who work at sea. So the semen and sperm are different. In fact, the sperms are in the semen, and the function of the semen is to help to transport the sperm wherever it's supposed to go. Okay? The vaginal secretion is when someone is ready to have sex. You find that the vagina will secrete or produce some wetness, and that is called the vaginal secretion. I don't know what I think they have a terminology, how they say it in Papiamento.
Vocht vagina.
Okay. And we know what is breast milk. But it's like when the vagina gets wet.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
It's what you get in the foreplay and all that to prepare the person for penetration. So
Right.
for vocht is in Papiamento.
Okay. Now let's look at the mode of transmission. When we say mode, we are saying about the method how HIV is being transmitted. Approximately 75% worldwide of HIV transmission comes between heterosexual, meaning with a man and a woman, not with homosexuals or gays or bisexual. The majority of infection comes by unprotected sex between a man and a woman. And infection are being transmitted through these different kinds of sex. You have the vaginal sex, anal sex, oral sex. But just to give you a little bit of explanation about these different types of sex and their risk, all of them are at high risk in one way or the other.
Robert, can you say it again? to the
all
people
of
listening.
these type of sex, whether it's vaginal sex, anal sex, oral sex, all of them have a high risk.
Então, espera que tu escuta. All of them are at risk. All of them. Okay,
Yes.
continue, Robert.
Well, we know vaginal sex is when the penis penetrates the vagina, and even there it's a risk because the how the woman's body is made is that the vagina can easily be tear or bruise if the woman is not fully prepared psychologically for penetration, or if enough lubricant is not used at the point of penetration, where you can have tear and bruises, and when penetration is enter and if the person is not wearing a condom, the semen can get in contact with those openings and the virus can enter into the body. Okay? Now, anal sex is a type of sex that people don't want to talk about.
But it's being done.
Well, anal sex has become very popular, and a lot of women are having anal sex. In fact, some women go to the extent of having anal sex so that at least they can keep their partner without understanding the risk. And they are saying that anal sex, the public at large and people are saying anal sex is very disgusting to talk about. Anal sex has its people. It's not something that people who are religious minded should talk about because it's disgusting and it's just dirty, and you find that they are doing it left, right, and center.
Exactly, because right now, Robert, one of the things that they have been done in the last research in the Caribbean, that anal sex is being done a lot on the young people because it's one way the guy will not get the girl pregnant, and from the religious side, the girl still a virgin to go to the altar. So it is something that lately is being practiced a lot in the Caribbean.
Yes, and also some people use anal sex for other reasons. For example, a man who is having anal sex with a woman or even with another man, he wants to feel that he is dominant and can dominate him or her at any time, so that can add to his self-esteem to say that he's in charge without understanding the risk involved in anal sex. Some men believe at this point in time that anal sex is safe when it is being performed on a woman. That, okay, if you have a man who is having anal sex with another man, is risky according to some men, but if you have anal sex with a woman, it is not risky. You are less likely to be infected because the woman's anus is different. It is the same risk because the sphincter muscle there can be very tight, and if someone is not properly prepared for anal sex at the point of penetration, you can also have tear and bruises and come in contact with the other body fluids like the semen, that it's a high risk where people can become infected. I want to particularly bring to our attention that in order for someone to become infected with HIV, you must have to have exchange of body fluid. It is not a situation where you don't have exchange of body fluid and people can become positive. You must have that exchange of body fluid. It is very sad to know that I saw something on Facebook, I think it was last year or this year, I can't recall the period, where a young woman, she is working in Trinidad and Tobago, but she works in a fast food restaurant. I want to believe it's either KFC or Churches. And it was rumored that she's HIV positive. And people started to talk about it. And they're saying that, well, they are scared to buy the chicken and they are very afraid to use the ketchup because she can become so vindictive and she can cut her finger and she can infect the ketchup, and when they use the ketchup, they too can become HIV positive. It's sad to know in the year 2016, 2017, we still have that mindset where you can become positive through these methods.
But you know, Robert, in Curacao itself, last year we had a case like that a client refused to be served by a waiter, and it was a foreigner waiter working here, because she said she know that man is positive, because she saw the man in the same room where she go to doctor. But for you to see how by serving you food, I can infect you with HIV.
Well,
and I'm glad you brought it up, because the other myths also that if someone get an accident and he or she is on the street there, cut, and the blood is spread off all over, that if I go and touch, I might get infected.
No, it's not so easily possible that you become infected. You must have an opening wound for that infected blood to come in contact with your open wound so that the virus can enter. So for example, if someone is HIV positive and they cut their hand and that drop on me or any part of my body and I don't have an opening, it means that I cannot become HIV positive because no blood and no fluid exchange is taking place, and is that nothing can happen. But people are so not informed. Sometimes I take some empathy on people because they are not informed, and because they lack this kind of information. That is why they behave in this way.
Robert, we will come back to continue on this aspect. We'll just go for a break and we'll be back just now.
Okay.
E nós estamos continuando com o programa Cura Plus para informar, educar, para se negociar com prevenir. A noite nós estamos conversando com Robert Singh, riba e tópico de highway, e também poniendo énfasis e atenção riba diferentes aspectos. Robert, before we went to the break, he was talking about the body fluid part. And in Curacao, it's very funny, I'm laughing by bringing this up. People has the myth that, for instance, you have a car accident and the person has been like half an hour lay down there on the street, and when the ambulance come and the nurses, they are getting so much in panic to rush to put the hand and the gloves on to attend the patient. Explain for people to understand that whole aspect of the body fluid, and when the virus die also, because it is a cold blood on the street out there.
Well, that's important to know, because people, when they respond with panic, the first thing comes to my mind that persons are not very informed about the mode of transmission with HIV. With regards to an accident, you find that people who are involved in the accident are more at a higher risk than those who have to assist with the accident. Because if people are traveling in a vehicle, let's say a public transportation, and we don't know the status of everyone, someone can be in that group of population where they are HIV positive, and if they have an opening and the other person who is negative have an opening, and during that impact and that crash and so on, you can have exchange of body fluid.
Yes.
But let's say that I'm working at the hospital and I'm being called to assist in this accident. It is by right I have to prepare using all my precautions and my gloves and so on, as like any other case, because we don't know who is who. We have to take the precaution, but we should not panic, because when you panic and you do things that can make me feel stigmatized, it means that it looks bad on the person who is a professional, because you want to know how do they meet the status of being a nurse and they're not informed about this kind of public health. It means that the nurse and the doctor, the helper of the ambulance, even to the driver, must be informed and educated about these kind of relevant infection. But if someone is having a cut or a bruise and there's bleeding, and the person is in an open environment, especially in the day, and that blood drips and leaks on the road, and if you come in contact with that blood, I am not saying that there is a very high risk or any risk at all for persons who come to assist are being infected, because we don't know how long that a live virus can live in an exposed environment, because we know that in the immune system or in the body, the virus can change, it can mutate, it's well protected.
It's warm, yes.
Yeah, but when it comes to the external and when it comes to out of its natural environment, how long it can live there, it is not known. But I don't think it can survive for half an hour. I don't think it can survive for 15 minutes, unless there is a thick clump of blood that remains active, where that virus takes host in that and can continue to live. But with the harsh element, no, the virus cannot survive. I want to add to that also that I see in hospitals, I'm not sure here, but I see in hospitals in Guyana that nurses who just graduate from the nursing school, they come to work on the infectious ward, and some of them will not attend to patients who are HIV positive, because they are so much afraid that they too become infected. So there are time and time again we have to provide counseling and education to our nurses, because I don't know here
It
what
is here in Curacao, sadly have to say, you have a group of nurses who react in this way, and therefore right now Cura Plus is going to the nurse college to talk about HIV and the health care part of HIV, to try to motivate the new generation of nurses that they are better prepared to attend this kind of cases. But it happened, and sometimes it happened in a way that the whole attitude, the whole body language come forward so discriminated to what is the patient.
I agree, and I can imagine someone who is HIV positive, who is going through such amount of stress, and then a nurse or a health worker can come and add more burden to that person. So nurses in general and doctors have to take the necessary precaution like anyone else, but nurses and doctors must be educated and informed. Imagine, I remember one experience, a nurse stand in the middle of the male medical ward and she's saying that I am not working, loud as and clear. She is not working with anyone who is HIV positive. And I was right there. So I put her in the corner and I said that you cannot make such statement like that because people are going to ask, they're going to question what kind of nurse you are, if you are a nurse. Because if you spend 2 and 3 years in the nursing school, you must make to a point where you have to understand infection,
Yes.
where you have to understand virus, bacteria, all these different kind of pathogens and agents that can cause infection. You need to understand that, and even Dudley, and even if the nursing school does not have that in their curriculum, you as a nurse going to work in a hospital, you have to bring yourself to educate yourself to that point.
Yes, that's why we have internet today. Google this kind of information for yourself.
In my practice as a social work practitioner, we do not take on the medical aspect. We do more on psychosocial aspect. But because I'm working with these people, I need to know, I need to help them. I need to inform and educate them so they can understand their illness and able to deal with it better. So I take the opportunity to inform myself, and the government of the day also provide more opportunity where people can adequately becomes knowledgeable and know what they are doing. When I go up into the ward and do my ward rounds, and patient will sit up and I will give them a hug, you can see, but Robert didn't know that woman is HIV positive. Let him try there. Before the year is out, he's going to become infected. But I'm 51 and I spent 8 years in the public health and I'm not infected.
So you see, Robert, what you are saying here, I'm glad to bring it up because this is one of the things that even today, 30 years after HIV are existing in our world, you still have nurses today behaving like that. Even I can go further. You have nurses who will say to the other colleague, you go and attend that patient. I am not going because I hear that person is HIV positive. Or you have someone just got into the emergency and someone will turn and say, you know he or she is HIV. They are not putting attention to the situation, but they are gossiping about the status of the patient without realizing that this is affecting that person there, because that person has a problem already and coming to the emergency, and you are spreading my status in place of giving me service. And it is so sad to see this, and I'm totally agree with you, but it still exists. It still exists today. That a great deal of nurses are not prepared to deal with this.
Well, in the first place, nurses who are not prepared to deal with HIV, they should not become nurses at all. Choose another profession, because the patient have equal right as a nurse, and a hospital cannot function without patient. So everybody or everyone is equally important in a hospital setting. A nurse is not higher than a patient. Any nurse who looks down on a patient, I take empathy on that nurse and say, he or she doesn't know better. But also, in addition, hospitals are under the Ministry of Health or the Public Health Department must have guidelines when nurses stigmatize and discriminate patient. Patient must have rights to report these nurses, and there must be some sort of outcome, whether in the form of discipline, whether in the form of training, to give more knowledge and information so nurse can better able to prepare to deal with these kind of eventuality. Then sometimes nurses need to sit back, or doctors or anyone else, even me or us, we need to sit back and say, if I become infected, would I like someone to treat me like this? No, I wouldn't. So at least have some love in your heart and reach out with this kind of, if you don't have love, reach out with duty. It is your duty. You are being paid. This is a profession you choose. Don't discriminate. And that's another area we have to work on to provide more discussion. But let's go through with with the mode of transmission. So we talk about anal sex. We now touching on oral sex. Oral sex is when sex is performed with the mouth, whether if it's a woman is sucking a man's penis, or a man is licking a woman's vagina, or whether if it's a man sucking another man's penis, whatever, whoever, it's oral sex. And if you have an opening there, it means that body fluid can transmit and the person can become infected.
What about anal oral?
Well, anal oral it's a form of sex, and if the anus is having any tear, and if your mouth is having any opening, then you have to have some exchange of body fluid. It's a risk, but it's not a very high risk, but it's a risk.
Okay.
Because remember, you cannot see this virus. It is so tiny. It's microscopic. It means that you have to use microscope to see it. And in those kind of activity, you don't know what is going on.
But the anal oral sex is well risk when it comes to STDs.
Yes, it's, because HIV also is an STI. Yeah, but if someone is licking someone's anus, it means that if there's an opening in the anus, if it's tear or so on, and let's say I am doing the licking, and I lick someone's anus and there's an opening, and when I take that fluid from the anus into my mouth and there's an opening in my mouth, then you can have an exchange and it becomes a risk.
Good. It's very good.
Other methods of transmission, we have mother to child, and this is 3 ways how the virus can pass on from the mother to the child. It can happen while the child is in the mother. It can happen while the child is coming through the birth canal, and it can also happen when the mother is breastfeeding the child. So I will need to do a little bit of explanation here. Before the mother becomes pregnant, I want to emphasize that if a HIV positive man and a HIV positive woman decided to have a child, it means when the sperm of the man fertilizes the egg of the woman, that when the fertilization takes place, it means that baby is HIV negative.
Robert, so I will ask you to explain this. Why? Because I'm sure right now a lot of men are sitting to listen, because we get cases of men who saying, I want to be father, but because I'm HIV positive, I cannot make a baby. Or women who say, I want to be a mother, but because I'm HIV positive, I cannot conceive a baby. So this is very important that you explain in a way that they understand clearly what you just said.
Okay, well, if we have to look at the body fluid, the HIV virus, for the man, the virus is present in the blood and in the semen and not the sperm. The semen and the sperm are two different body fluid, even though that they are in one. The sperm is primarily to fertilize the egg, and the semen is to help the sperm and give it the nutrient to take it wherever it's supposed to go. Now the egg in the woman, they are the body fluid of the woman. The virus is found in the breast milk, in the blood, and in the vaginal secretion, and not in the egg of the woman. So when the sperm, the man eject the sperm, it's a negative sperm because the sperm doesn't have any HIV, because the HIV is not found in the sperm, it's found in the semen. And when that sperm swims to reach the egg in the woman, the egg does not contain the HIV. So when they fuse together and fertilization takes place from that minute, it means it's a negative because it's a negative sperm and a negative egg, although the man is positive and the woman is positive. So we have to understand where the HIV is present and in which body fluid. So we will get to that in more detail.
Yes, we will have a program on that because it's very important.
But the baby can be infected in the womb. The baby can be infected while coming through the birth canal, and the baby can be infected while breastfeeding. So when someone becomes HIV positive, and if in this case a woman and she's not aware of her status, and she goes to the clinic, the routine test is to test to see if there's any viruses, including HIV. But if she found out that she's HIV positive, she must go on treatment in her second trimester. In the first trimester, doctors do not want to administer any treatment because it can have an impact on the unborn child. And the second trimester, because the whole trimester is divided into 13 weeks. So 13 trees will give us 39. So you have 39 weeks. And in the second trimester, if the mother is positive, then the ARV is administered. Now, when the baby is coming through the birth canal, but before the birth canal, let me emphasize a little bit more while the baby is in the womb. While the baby is there, the baby can be well protected from the virus. And how is that when the mother is placed on the ARVs, which is the HIV medication, what that medication does, it lowers the amount of viral load in that mother. Because in the placenta that houses the baby, you have two main tubes attached to the umbilical cord, and one of the tube is taking nutrient to the baby, and the other tube is bringing out the waste matter from the baby. So you find that if the HIV viral load in the mother is lower, there is a higher probability that the baby, while it's in the womb, will not be infected because the viral load is low. And the mother must go on her ARVs not later than the second trimester. As you go later, it becomes higher the risk.
Okay.
Now, while the baby is coming through the birth canal, the baby can become infected because when the placenta broke and all those amniotic fluid becomes in contact with the unborn child, it can go into the mouth, the eye, the nose, the ear, and so on. It can have an entry to go and infect the baby, because that body fluid, you can have also the HIV virus. But if the mother on ARV, it can drastically lower the viral load. But when the baby is, before the baby is born, a start dose of ARV is given to the mother so that further reduce the viral load. And when the baby just come out the birth canal, a start dose of prophylaxis is also given to that infant, so that if any virus is there, that baby is well protected and that baby can become negative. However, upon breastfeeding and the mother is taking her ARVs properly, either on very good guidance and counseling, that mother, if she chooses to breastfeed, she can breastfeed her baby, even though that the HIV virus is found in the breast milk. But I want to make it very clear, I am not sitting here tonight to advocate breastfeeding for HIV positive mother. I am here to give the information, because at the end of the day, that mother have the right to decide if she wants to breastfeed. And if she wants to breastfeed, she can breastfeed, because the breast milk contains the least amount of HIV virus. The breast milk contains the least amount of HIV. And taking your ARVs and on time and receiving the guidance and support, and if the mother chooses to breastfeed, she can. Because since 2009, the World Health Organization has approved that HIV positive mothers can breastfeed their babies, but the protocol can differ from countries to country. If Cura have a policy, no, it's no. However, if the mother decide to breastfeed, she must be able to receive proper guidance and counseling, because breast milk is the only milk that is critical for the development of the baby's brain, the lung, the heart, and other immune system of the baby, and to provide better growth and development. No other formula can substitute for breast milk. So that is why breast milk is very important.
Okay, we are going for a break and we will come back to continue. And I'm very glad that Robert brought this, because this is showing the new development into HIV when it comes to mothers and breastfeeding. Because right now, a lot of people still living with the myths that you cannot breastfeed. But since you have brought it out very clearly that since 2009, World Health Organization have approved that you can breastfeed your born baby without any problem. So we are coming back just now after this break to continue talking with Robert Singh. A very, very interesting program tonight. So stay tuned and don't go anywhere. E nós também temos o programa Cura Plus para informar, educar, para você como prevenir. Agora nós estamos conversando com Robert Singh sobre diferentes aspectos de HIV/AIDS. Robert.
Thank you. I just want to stick in this other piece of information pertaining to breastfeeding. Now, if a mother decides to breastfeed her baby and she's on her ARV and receiving proper guidance and counseling, she must not mix feed. Mixed feed is a concept where you give the baby the breast milk and also you give the baby formula. That can put the baby at risk for contracting HIV. How is that? It is because when a baby is breastfed exclusively, meaning breast milk alone, you do not have to clean that baby mouth because there is no built up of residue or milk or so on, because the breast milk is so different that when the baby is latched on to the breast, is that milk go directly into the baby's mouth and down into the system. But when you have mixed feed in terms of bottle, it means that the milk can go around into the baby's mouth and the residue can leave there, and you have to clean the baby's mouth. And normally when you clean a baby mouth, and some people use glycerine, they will take a piece of cloth and then they will scoop it around. And remember, the baby mouth is very tender, so if you scoop, you can bruise. And if you bruise, that can cause an opening. And when you decide to breastfeed now, and that breast milk goes to that opening, it means that it's a risk that the baby can become infected. But if you breastfeed alone, there is no need to clean the baby mouth, except for you have to look into the baby mouth to see if, when the baby give a little bit of burp, any of the residue from the baby can remain into the baby's mouth. All the mother need to do is to clean her finger and just take it out.
Yeah.
But it's quite different if you have to use a piece of cloth to scoop. That can also be a risk. So if you mix feed baby with milk and breast milk, it becomes a high risk for infection, and also it put a burden on the baby system because the baby can become stunned, where the growth can hamper because all the nutrients are not there. Okay, just that point to remember. So we are on the mode of transmission, and we look at unprotected sex in terms of vaginal, anal, oral. We look at mother-to-child transmission while the mother is in the womb, during delivery and after delivery in terms of breastfeeding. And we are also looking at drug users, people who use drugs in terms of needles, that they use a needle where they make the cocaine into a liquid and then they use it to inject the cocaine into the vein. That's a very high risk because those people use the hollow bone needle, and what the hollow bone needle does is that it provides a safe haven for the HIV to be in that needle and to be transmitted or transferred to another user. So when someone is using cocaine with hollow bone needle, it means that they have to tie their hand so that they can find a vein, and then they will inject that cocaine in liquid form and they will inject it directly into their vein. And if you're going deep into the vein and someone is HIV positive, it means you are coming in contact with the virus. And when you pull that needle out, that virus can go into that hollowness and be safe there because the virus is not exposed to too many elements because it took shelter into that space. And immediately it passed to the other user. And when that user inject also, you pass on the virus. So using needles, drug user or people who misuse drugs, use syringe, it's a very high risk. You have other ways of transmission. You have blood donation, and that's very rare because, excuse me, when someone is donating blood, it means that the hospital, before the person donates the blood, the person has to go through screening and testing to make sure that there is no virus exists there with that person. And the blood that is collected from the donor is not readily given to the patient. That blood now goes to the blood bank. It remains there for a period. I think they can keep it up to 120 days. And the blood that was there before, that is the one that goes to the patient. Also, that blood will go through another kind of testing before it is being transfused to the patient. So blood donation is very rare. Other means of transmission, you have occupational exposure. And occupational exposure is where healthcare workers, especially doctors and nurses, who are administering injection using syringe, and if they get stuck, they administer the injection via syringe, and if they get stuck immediately afterward, it can become a risk. Also, nurses and doctors need to pay attention, especially when they're using a syringe with a cap. So when they finish giving the injection, they do not leave the syringe here or leave it there or have it in their hand and attending to other things. It means that they have to cap it right away and if possible dispose it so that they cannot come in contact with it. So those are some of the other ways you can have transmission. You can also have by organ transplant, which is also very rare. Okay, so I think we have some time now. We can look at some preventative method. Yes, the preventative methods that anyone can take, even people who are not HIV positive, are the ABCD method. A is for abstain or abstinence, and hardly likely that can actually get to younger people who are very sexually active. Because working with young people, especially young teenage mothers who give their first birth to their first child 14, 15, 16, and you discuss family planning with them, they tell you no. They say, social worker, I am not going for abstinence, because indeed they can't abstain. They know now how to even to make a baby. So how on earth I'm going to tell someone to abstain when everything is alive and well with them? Some people say, well, they can't be faithful. There are people who are very faithful. They can be faithful. Well, if you cannot be faithful, you can use a condom. And young people also tell me, For example, when you do work with young people, they say, well, it's hard for them to use condom. You ask why, they say, well, when they're ready, they don't have time to put on condom. They want to put in right away, right? But young people have to be mindful, because unprotected sex, it's a very high risk. You can expose yourself. And if you're using a condom, D means drug-free. Do not take drug and having sex, especially alcohol. What it does, it's impair the judgment with someone who wants to engage in sex and they're under the influence of alcohol or any other drug. They do not make the right and informed decision. So A, B, C, D, abstinence, abstain, Be faithful. If you cannot be faithful, use a condom. And if you're using a condom, be drug free.
Robert, before we come to end our program, I want to ask you a question. In the case earlier, you said the infection take place higher under the heterosexual community, man
Yes.
and woman having sex. Now, I want to ask you this question because I want it to be clarified for the listener.
Okay.
Which one can get easily infected? The woman that receives the penetration, or the man that is giving the penetration to the woman in the act?
Well, from my understanding is that it is the receiving partner, which is the woman.
Mhm.
She is at a higher risk for to become infected, because if you look at the anatomy or the makeup of the woman, especially the vaginal area, is that you have a higher risk of bruising. And you know, sometimes when I listen to this Jamaican song, it will say fragile punani, and the Jamaican call it vagina punani, and they use the word fragile. But that singer actually know what he's singing about, even though I'm not supporting the song because it's not a good representation on women. But the vagina is indeed fragile, where it can receive bruises, even when the woman is not quite ready and the man wants to make the penetration. It becomes a very high risk, even in instances of rape, where the woman has never agreed on a penetration and the man just penetrates. So she is at a higher risk for bruises and tear and so on, and where the semen can come in contact with an opening. Unlike the male partner, especially if he is circumcised, the head of the penis is quite resistant to any tear or opening. So even though that if the man is negative and the woman is positive, it is a lower risk in that sense that the man can become positive because of the way how the penis is made up, especially if he is circumcised. Because when it's circumcised, it is not, the head of the penis is not so easily bruised. In fact, circumcision among men has shown drastic reduction of transmission of HIV infection.
So is for us to make it clear, it's much easier that a woman get infected by a man than a woman infect a man.
Exactly.
Okay, that I'm glad you explained it, because most of the time this is also based on culture's belief and things that sometimes the whole myth of how transmission can be occur. Sometimes you have men that say a lot of things, but now I'm glad that Robert explained it, that how easily a woman can get infected by a man who is HIV positive than the woman who is positive to infect a man.
To end it all off, men generally think that when they become infected, it is because it's the woman who make them infected and not them. They were safe, they were doing everything right, and they cast the blame on the woman.
Okay. Robert, we are coming to the end of our program. We still have a lot to discuss. This is not Robert last time in the program. From now on, we're gonna have Robert more often in the program, because the kind of information he has is very useful for our listener, and our people will get more educated. I'm really glad and honored that I had him tonight in the program. All the new stuff that I myself got to know tonight is very useful for my daily work I do outside there. So Robert, I thank you very much for share with us all this experience, all this knowledge you have. You like a database, as I say, a walking database. And I'm very glad the simple way that you brought it forward to the people in a very simple language so they can understand what you are saying. Before we close tonight, Robert, what is your message, your word for our listener?
Well, first of all, I want to thank all the listeners from the bottom of my heart, because if there were no listeners, then it would not have been a very good program. And with regards to HIV and AIDS, every time you saw or see someone who's infected with HIV, just try to put yourself in that someone's shoe and try to imagine what they are going through, and let your heart lead you to some form of kindness. You don't have to help financially, or you don't have to contribute anything, but a kind word can go a long way. Don't do or act in a way that will create more burden on someone who is living with HIV. Try to understand, try to be empathic, try to say, I wouldn't want anyone to treat me like this, or my relatives or friends like this, so I'm not going to treat anyone like this. Tonight, take a stand. You have new information. We can always answer your questions. Take a stand to say, from now on, I am not going to stigmatize or discriminate someone with HIV and AIDS.
Robert, thank you very much for your contribution to our program, and we will have you back again to continue educating us on all the information you have and all the knowledge you have. Oyente nang masya danki pa wenochi pa escuchanos, danki pa vosso comment nang itulis nang join nos durante o programa aqui. Mi kinagabusan kunos mensaje, kunos palabra, itursiman. While you are proclaiming peace with your lips, be careful to have it even more fully in your heart. Pasa feliz noche, danke pa escucharnos y la que nos visite otro siman Joebs anoche y 8 pa 10 horas en otro programa cabinda nos sigue como Cura Plus, informabo, educabo pa você com prevenir.